Good morning and welcome to week 6 and the final week of EDCO's 64th annual virtual conference and showcase Evolve On. Today is also Pink Shirt Day, a day that we stand together in solidarity to put an end to bullying by promoting kindness and acceptance always. Although this year has been a bit different, the 2021 EDCO conference has certainly lived up to the Evolve On theme and delivered so many thought-provoking sessions that have provided economic developers new ideas, resources, and tools to evolve Ontario's communities. Today, we're pleased to present Leadership in Times of Disaster, our mayor's panel, and personal leadership strategies presented by our sponsor for today, Farm Credit Canada. The Honourable Elizabeth Dowdeswell, Lieutenant Governor of Ontario, will also be with us to present the 2020 Lieutenant Governor's Award, EDCO's highest award. To end off our virtual conference, we're pleased to have Janet Stein come back to us and reflect on all that has happened since January 20th when we first gathered. And man, when we think about what's happened over those past 6 weeks, it's pretty impressive. Many thanks to my co-chair Belinda Whitgraham from the town of Minto and the entire planning team who volunteered their time and talents to create such a wonderful program. This can't be done without an incredible team. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge these amazing people. Aliyah Abbas from Ryerson University, Lena DeCellis from the Corporation of the City of Welland, James Lynn from the Ministry of Heritage, Sport, Tourism and Culture Industries, Heather Madden from the County of Brant, Stephen Morris from the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs, Cephas Panchow from the town of Tillsonburg, Laura Thompson from the City of Orillia, and Katie Ward from the Pay Equity Office of Ontario. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure working with all of you this year. I also would like to express our sincere appreciation to our standing roster of presenters. Their photos and bios have also been posted on the EDCO conference website. In lieu of presenting speaker gifts, a contribution to the EDCO Scholarship Fund has been made on their behalf. A special thank you to all of our sponsors and those in our Innovators Showcase who are also listed on the conference website. Now, here are those housekeeping announcements you've all been waiting for and can probably recite them all with me now. Keep an eye on your inbox following today's webinar for the link to the conference evaluation. The login details to access the conference series videos will be available upon submission of this quick online evaluation. Today's videos will be uploaded within 48 hours, so you'll have to be a little patient for today's videos. Please check your spam or junk folders. If you don't receive the information to access the evaluation and recordings, please email Taylor Chamberlain at the EDCO office. We'll post the email in the chat. And we're up. There we go. Today's sessions have been pre-recorded in an effort to ward off those technical gremlins. Oh, the gremlins. However, our speakers will be with us live following the presentation to answer your burning questions. We encourage you to actively participate in all of the sessions through the Q&A and chat. It's been incredible, the Q&A and chat over the past 6 weeks. A reminder that the Q&A and chat buttons are located at the bottom of your screen and that you also have the ability to upvote questions. You'll see the raise hand function. You know the drill. Just pretend that it's not there and use the Q&A to ask your questions. Please also engage with your fellow attendees through the chat, either as a group or individually. It's a great way to share your thoughts on the presentations, provide resources, and relevant web links. I've found that in chat incredible resource as well. Finally, if you experience technical issues, please send an email to the address shown in the chat. And there it is right there. And now I'd like to welcome Clinton Butter, Director of Commercial Financing for Farm Credit Canada, our day sponsor, to give a brief welcome. Welcome, Clinton.
Thank you, Kate. And good morning, everybody. As Kate introduced me, my name is Clinton Butter, and I'm a Director of Commercial Financing with FCC. It's my pleasure to greet you all today on behalf of our organization here at EDCO's 64th Annual Conference and Showcase, FCC is proud to sponsor this virtual event. I'd like to speak with you just for a moment about who we are, and I want to talk to you about why you should partner with FCC. Our customers are your customers, and they are invested in their businesses. So are we. FCC is the only financial institution and lender 100% invested in Canadian food. This includes each of food and beverage and agribusinesses. We're a catalyst for the industry and for the businesses you work with every day. Our goals are similar to each of yours here today. We work with businesses to help them grow, expand, and achieve their dreams to their business's full potential. Our success isn't just about business results, it's about making a difference and helping our customers in times of need. And the current global pandemic has certainly underlined the importance of Canadian food, both for all of us here at home, but also to our export partners around the globe. Who does FCC finance, you may ask? You may be familiar with FCC's support of agriculture, but we also support the ecosystems that surround it, before and after the farm gate and all along the value chain, providing financing services for food suppliers and processors along the entire ag value chain. From capital injections and cash flow financing to equipment financing and land building and mortgage solutions, to name a few. With that, I'll wrap up by saying thank you for your time today. FCC is proud to sponsor today's event with each of you. And without further ado, I'll turn it back to you, Kate.
Thanks so much, Clinton and Farm Credit, for being our sponsor today. We really appreciate your contributions. Today's sessions are on the theme of leadership. So let's jump right into our first session, leadership in times of disaster.
I'm Susan Gardner, and I'm delighted to be here today on behalf of Municipal World to moderate this panel on leadership in times of disaster. Certainly, when we started this pandemic journey together almost a year ago now, we could not have imagined the size and scope of the crisis ahead. What was first thought to be a necessary but short-term sacrifice for the good of public health has continued over these many months with unenviable leadership challenges, not just in the short term, of course, but with impacts that extend well into our future. And we know it's going to take strong leadership in our communities to see us through to the other side, just as it has throughout the pandemic. We're fortunate to have three mayors joining us today for this panel. Mayor Jeff Lehman from the City of Barrie, Mayor Diane Therrien, City of Peterborough, and Mayor David Bailey, Brant County. The mayors will be talking about the experience in their communities and their thoughts about the path ahead. First, we'll be hearing from Mayor Jeff Lehman, City of Barrie. He's the 46th mayor of the City of Barrie, having been re-elected to a third term in 2018 with 91% of the popular vote. As an economist, he writes and speaks frequently on issues affecting Canadian cities. In 2019, U.S. business magazine Fast Company named him one of its 100 most creative people in business for his innovative solutions in government. Mayor Lehman is a passionate believer in transforming urban economies through public and private partnerships. Welcome, Mayor Lehman.
Thank you very much. Well, it's a delight to be able to sort of talk about some of the things that we think we've got right over the course of a pandemic. But I do want to emphasize from the outset, I mean, my first major message about leadership in times of disasters, it's not just that there isn't a playbook. There often isn't even visibility as to what the challenges are going to be. And I guess one of the first comments I wanted to make today is, you know, if we're sitting here in February of 2021, if I go back to March of 2020, almost a year ago, you know, one of the things that I remember and I've kept in my mind all the way through the last year was a South African doctor who had fought the Ebola virus, and he was speaking at an international panel early in COVID. And he said, you are going to have to make decisions without full information, sometimes without a lot of confidence in that information, but making the decision and moving quickly to try and stay ahead of the virus is the most important thing. And that is often the greatest challenge for leadership, because all of us in government, regardless of what level of government we're at or what our role is, we seek to have very, very good information before we make decisions. Everybody does. But sometimes we're not used to having to go faster rather than have as much information as we'd like. So I'm sure the other mayors will join me in having experienced council sending something back to staff saying we want more information before we're comfortable making this decision. You can't do that in a pandemic. And that's one of the reasons why many municipalities declared states of emergency, because some decisions had to be made immediately, and we have had to react. That being said, a pandemic is obviously a very long lasting emergency. And so the situations that we're facing now often are about secondary impacts of the pandemic and the broader impact of the public health crisis in terms of pulling resources away from other pressing issues, as well as exacerbating existing issues. And the second thing I guess I wanted to say today about managing times of disaster is it's not one issue during a pandemic you're going to deal with. It's 100, and 99 of them are influenced by the public health issue. A very good example is homelessness. We have had a housing crisis in the city of Barrie before COVID. Since COVID, the price of the average home here has increased by more than 30% over the course of the pandemic, with the exodus from Toronto and the pressure on our real estate market. Rents have risen. At the same time, we've seen discharge from institutions, people who were formerly institutionalized that have been discharged to avoid congregate settings. The resulting pressure of extremely high rents in my city and institutional discharge and so forth is a much worsened homelessness situation, which in the summer was outdoors. In the winter, it can't be. And with COVID, it can't be congregate. So that has been an enormous challenge, and one that very smart people and committed people in my charitable and not-for-profit sector have been tackling. But we've had to try and support, and that's required everything from changing bylaws on the fly to coming up with new models of support and trying to get those funded. I do want to talk today mostly, though, about the economic response, and I do have some slides to show in a minute about some of the things that we have tried to do to support our economy as we move forward. And I'll just ask maybe for the first slide there, the next slide. So this is a bit of a collage. I think there's some amazing stories that we can tell about how we've tried to pivot and adapt to COVID. And a couple of general things I'll say while this collage is up on the screen, because what you're seeing here is various different pieces of initiatives. You can see some manufacturers here, a craft brewer on the top right, a auto parts company in the bottom near the middle, who shifted to make face shields in the auto part company case, and hand sanitizer in case of the craft brewer, and a few other things that I'll talk about. But I think the important thing that we wanted to talk about here is that from early in the pandemic, it became apparent that support for the economy here was going to have to look totally different. And talk about no playbook. I think the story of the K-shaped recession is what most economists and observers call it, where lower paid jobs are being hit harder, and those sectors are the ones dropping, and actually higher paid sectors are often doing okay. That divergence in the economy, and the fact that unlike most other recessions, this one is affecting entirely different sectors than the typical economic cycle recession. So on day 2 or day 3 of the pandemic, which now is, I guess, March 16th or 17th of 2021, I formed what was called the Economic Support Task Force. We put together the leaders of all of our industry associations, everything from tourism to manufacturing, construction, home builders, retailers, and we started having regular Zoom calls, which at that time was a novel thing, and now we're all used to. But that task force ultimately evolved into a body that I believe is actually going to be sustained, called the Barrie Economic Forum, and that is the leaders of all of our industry groups. The reason we did that was for visibility into what was going on in our local economy, but also so that we could target our response to individual sectors. And what's happened, if I look back over the last year, we just met, that group of individuals just met, includes our downtown BIA, includes many of the business support organizations, our incubator, our college, and so forth, Chamber of Commerce. what they're telling me is certain sectors have actually done well during COVID. This is a reality for Barrie, anything related to real estate because of the incredible positive pressure on the real estate market. Manufacturing sector has largely been unaffected. Construction, heavy construction, and even in the industrial sector from a real estate perspective. And anybody building for healthcare, anybody making medical products. But other sectors such as food and accommodation, culture, anything tourism related has been very, very severely hit. And so what we've tried to do, and I'll spend the second half of my 10 minutes on this, is to come up with innovative solutions to try and help those sectors. And we started that very early on in COVID. We knew that the best way that we could help, and we always tried to have an eye to sustainability, and I mean that in the sense of, let's not just try and put band-aids on the immediate problems or offer short-term support. Let's try and help businesses build capacity that, ideally would be sustained even beyond COVID. And so some of our responses, I think, are going to be permanent, and hopefully some of the benefits that our businesses have realized, especially when it comes to building their online capacity, will help them in the long term. And local government does not have the kind of resources that the provincial or federal government have to be able to offer significant sums of money to do wage subsidies. We just don't have that money, and of course our revenues have been affected by COVID too. So we tried to do something where we were more creative in terms of regulatory responses and use of public space and so forth. So I'll just ask you, well, before you go to the next slide, in the middle of this slide, you can see people doing yoga on a band shell. That's Meridian Place, which is a public square in the middle of our historic downtown. We started something called Business in the Park, which was to allow businesses that usually in-person classes, fitness, yoga, and so forth, but any group activity that could be safely conducted outdoors, even if it was a business, they could do that in the park. And we started opening up a few parks for that. And I think the use of public space is something else that I'll point to in a couple more slides here. So next slide. So these were our areas of focus. We wanted to be responsive by sector to the individual needs. We wanted to try and use our public spaces to support the economy. Year of the Crane really relates to just how busy our real estate and construction sectors have been, because they have been able to really continue through COVID, but are now just taking off. And I just want to show you a few images to illustrate some of the things that we've worked on. Next slide. Digital Main Street, I think, is probably familiar to many. This is the program in partnership with senior levels of government to grow the online capacity of businesses. This is particularly important for small businesses that don't have a lot of online capacity. So we wanted to help them reach their customers and maintain their customers, but also to grow and sell to new customers. And this is a good example of something which creates capacity that sustains beyond COVID. It's a permanent benefit to the business if they can build their B2B capacity and B2C capacity. We've had over 300 businesses in our Digital Main Street programs, and we're now asking the province to continue this because we really believe it's got a lot of bandwidth, pardon the pun. Next slide. Patios everywhere. So in early April, I brought a proposal to Barrie Council. This was actually only about 3 weeks into the pandemic, to say, let's allow businesses to convert parking spaces to outdoor eating space. I certainly didn't come up with that idea. I'd seen it in Europe in a couple of examples that were already being well sort of around by social media. But what we did was to say, it doesn't matter if you're in a strip plaza or downtown where you're taking up some sidewalk, you may take up parking spaces or public space in front of your restaurant or coffee shop for outdoor dining. And we made that program at no cost, the application and permitting process. And we had an expedited and online portal to do that. And I really have to give credit to our staff who put that together in less than a month, so that we were ready to go in early May. And most of those establishments were able to open as soon as the good weather started to arrive. And that, of course, just uses the public space to create a safe dining environment and grows the capacity of the businesses when they had to reduce their indoor capacity. Keep in mind, that was the first wave. And we're certainly going to do that again now, and hopefully we don't have to do it amid a third wave, but we will be doing that in the first part of this year and probably continuing on, because I think this is part of one of the lasting impacts of COVID for cities. We're going to rethink public spaces, I think, in a lot of ways. We're still going to need roads and infrastructure and so forth, but I think we're going to see a lot more creative use of public space and more people-oriented public spaces. And that process is probably going to move faster now. I think we discovered that we could do this really quickly. So why can't we do other things like it really quickly? Next slide. So just another image of our historic downtown and some of the patios. Now those silver bollards are because the other thing we did, we were right in the middle of digging up our main street when COVID hit. And thanks to our contractor, they came to us after about 2 weeks into the pandemic and said, you know, why don't we try and get this done faster because all these businesses are closed. And we did that. We went on an expedited schedule. We worked with the contractor and we got this Main Street renovation done. Those are convertible sidewalks. So what you can see there between the dark and light paving is those are parking spaces during the winter because the silver bollards get moved back closer to the sidewalk. So for the winter months, the Christmas shopping season, you can use the parking spaces on street. And then in the summer, that's where those bollards are positioned, and it creates a big, big, wide pedestrian realm, which includes these patios. Next slide. Open Air Dunlop is closing and pedestrianizing Dunlop Street. For those not familiar with Barrie, is the main street of our historic downtown. And we opened it up, and this program was actually so successful in August and September that we brought it back on some of those warm days in October. And we saw it was really great because we did see a lot of people, but they were distancing. And we actually had people down there, staff and everybody, trying to help make sure that people did distance because there was some nervousness around too many people coming down. But it really worked wonderfully well. And like I said, I think we'll all be reimagining public space. Just a couple more slides to show about these sorts of things. Next. Business in the Park, I think I mentioned previously, this is former Olympian Anne Green's yoga school from 4 doors over from the space. And we're going to try and broaden this program this year. Next. So Year of the Crane, this is, believe it or not, we had a groundbreaking right in the middle of COVID. And as you can see, it had snowed. This is for a condo. You can see the building behind it right on the waterfront, the Lac House in Barrie. These are Finnish developers, and that's the husband-wife team behind the project. Believe it or not, this is the first of 22 high-rise buildings in Barrie City Core that have been approved and are moving through the permitting process now. We've seen an explosion in demand for high rise, and that is partly because the economics of development have improved with the rise in prices, but partly because there is so much more interest in urban living in our city now. And that we had Mike Moffat up here for the Economic Forum yesterday, talking about how people are moving from Toronto out to cities like Peterborough and Barrie and London and others. And that is driving demand in a remarkable way. Next slide. This is Smart Centers. They are moving ahead this year with a hotel and 4 towers in the core area, and a scale of development that we haven't seen before in Barrie. What was really interesting, and this is one of the last things I'll say for my session, is in April, I called all of the major proponents of major developments in Barrie that were in the queue when COVID started. And I said, what's happening? Are you continuing? Are you slowing down? Are you stopping? What are you thinking? Every single one said we're continuing. And a couple of them said we want to go faster. And I was totally surprised by that. But that's what's played out. And I think it's anyone's crystal ball as to whether these trends continue post-COVID, but I suspect they will. As the nature of work changes, more people work at home. I think the cities around the Greenbelt, outside of the Greenbelt, are going to see sustained pressure for growth. And I think one of the opportunities that creates for us is a much more balanced form of growth, and to be frank, a more urban form of growth. And we're certainly seeing that in Barrie. I think I've got one more slide. This is another development, HIP developments in the core area of the city. The white building in front is a new YMCA that we hope to put on that site later this year. Between that and the Smart Centers project that I just showed you, which is on the left, the vacant site on the left, that's 7 of the 22 towers right in at one corner. Next slide. Okay, and I've certainly taken my time. So just to sum up, leadership in times of crisis, I don't claim to have the proper playbook, but I will say this, that we know you're going to have to make decisions based on incomplete information. But what we tried to do with our economic response and with this the growth changes is to try and bring in benefits and support programs that would create sustained benefit for our business community. And through a number of creative solutions, I'm hoping that we were able to do that, and we're continuing to do that now as we move through the pandemic. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. Now we're going to hear from Mayor Diane Therrien from the city of Peterborough. She was first elected to City Council in 2014 to represent Ward 3, and in 2018, she was elected Mayor of Peterborough. Mayor Therrien is the youngest person to be elected to the office. She has experience in private, public, and nonprofit sectors and has worked for the former Ministry of Aboriginal Affairs, the Peterborough Poverty Reduction Network, the YMCA of Peterborough, Halliburton, and Trent University. Welcome, Mayor Therrien.
Thank you very much, Susan. It's great to be here with all of you today. I'm at home, working from home today, sometimes in the office, sometimes at home, depends. But calling in from Anishinaabe territory, from Williams Treaty territory. And really interesting listening to Mayor Lehman. There's a lot of similarities. I haven't been to Barrie in a long time. I haven't been anywhere in a long time, but certainly I would love to come check it out as soon as it's permissible to do so. There's a lot of similarities between, again, when there was the talk about there's no playbook, but one of the sort of upsides I could say of this is that we're kind of all going through it together. Like, we don't have that playbook, but certainly as mayors, we can share and commiserate. I'm part of the Eastern Ontario Mayor's Caucus. And so that's a venue where we share a lot of ideas and information about what's working, what's not working, because things changed rapidly. So early March last year, we kind of were hearing about this virus and trying to figure out I was also on the side planning a trip to Mexico, which didn't end up happening. But we were hearing about this virus and people were starting to ask about it. And it was like, okay, I brought it up under other business at a council meeting saying, like, we're monitoring this, we're working with public health, we'll keep you posted. Literally by that end of that week, we were like, we're going to need to cancel March break programs. The following week, we declared a state of emergency. So it, as you all know, it rapidly escalated in Ontario. And so we still technically have our municipal state of emergency declared. My council and I have struck a sort of a subcommittee around a policy group, because a lot of the times state of emergency bylaws were written to deal with, so in Peterborough, there was the Great Flood of 2004. And so to deal with a very specific natural disaster, something that has you can see the problem and then you can clean the problem up. A pandemic is not like that. So the emergency management bylaw that we have isn't actually responsive to or tailored to this type of emergency. And from what we're hearing from scientists, we need to perhaps prepare another bylaw that would be applicable to this kind of public health emergency, because they're predicted to become more frequent, or at least we need to have some infrastructure in place to deal with it. So that's something that we're working on. In the meantime, as I said, our other state of emergency remains in place. But it's been a really challenging year, I know, for all of us. And, and those of us on this call, have been fortunate enough to still be getting paid and come to work. So we're, ahead of the curve on that. But our small businesses, I wanted to kind of highlight that, because Mayor Lehman, you talked a little bit about it. They are so creative and innovative and adaptable. And we just got to reopen here on Tuesday into the yellow zone. And I'm very excited for that. Although, again, like, cautiously optimistic, because we still need to be practicing all of the health, public health guidelines that we've been hearing about for a year now. So people should all be very familiar with them. But we've had some really good success stories as well. So a lot of our small businesses, and Peterborough is like a mid-sized city, right? We've got a lot of change. There's a bit of an older Peterborough, and then there's like a new Peterborough trying to work together. And I'm not from Peterborough. I've only been here for 10 years. But a lot of the businesses, particularly downtown, are run by young entrepreneurs, a lot of them female, and they've been just kicking ass, taking advantage of everything online, Instagram. They've been doing quite well. Now, a lot of the, sort of different sectors, it's been a different story. So how do we try to navigate that and bridge that gap? So similar to many communities, we had a mayor and wardens economic task force in Peterborough. We have the city and the county. So we're a single tier, but we work with the county on several issues, including economic development, because there's so many folks that live here that work out there or vice versa. And then again, the housing prices and the rental piece and the housing crisis is something that's not unique to Peterborough, but it certainly has been exacerbated by that and the GTA expats in many ways. So we brought together this mayor and wardens task force that had several recommendations that we've been working on implementing. There's only so much, as was said, that at a municipal level we can do. We have limited tools, we have limited ability to raise revenue. So some of the recommendations were things that we leverage up through our MPP and our MP, both of whom I have good working relationships with. I also, kind of aside from the economic task force, I struck something that's called a community resiliency and recovery task force. And so that is designed because everybody wanted to be at this mayor and wardens task force, and you can't have 100 people around a table, you're not going to get anything done. So some of those less traditional sectors, so in Peterborough, we have a really strong arts and culture community, which people don't think of as like when you think of the economy, even though they have more value for dollar than even some of the sports teams. But we said, okay, well, how do we pull that in? And how do we hear from those sectors as well? Because they are so vital to not just the economy, but the vibrancy and uniqueness of a community. If you don't have art and if you don't have music, like you have a dead city. You don't have that kind of culture. And they haven't been able to do anything since March. There was some interesting stuff done like outside when the weather was nicer, but we brought that together to talk about not just, how do we make sure we're addressing those gaps, but how do we also look at this resiliency piece moving forward? So again, going back to the fact that if there's, within the next couple decades, the potential for another pandemic like this, how do we make sure we're set up to deal with it? Because we weren't set up this time. But we certainly have learned a lot of lessons very quickly. And as Mayor Lehman said, we realized that government can move very quickly, which is one of the things that I know frustrates all of us in these chairs, I think, when things move a lot slower than we feel they need to. But how can we build that work plan or build those strategies to say, okay, in 10 years, I'm not going to be mayor, but how do we set them up for success so that if something like this happens again, we're not, looking again upwards to our provincial government who's sitting on billions of dollars, and our federal government who again have, can only do so much. How do we make sure that we as a local body can take care of ourselves? And Peterborough, as I'm sure your communities are, is known for being like so generous, taking care of each other. Like we come together when times are tough, but these are exorbitantly hard times. And so the impact that we're feeling now, I think is just the start. I mean, really, even with this reopening, what we're going to be hearing about in terms of the mental health piece, in terms of social isolation. We have a high proportion of seniors in Peterborough, one of the highest in the country. How do we make sure that we're still reaching out to them? Long-term care facilities. Those are a major driver in our region too. We have, again, a lot of seniors. How do we make sure that we're looking after those folks and reaching out to people who aren't going to be like watching this Zoom panel, right? Not everybody has access to the internet. So the good old art of the phone call is making a comeback, which I think is a good thing. but again, how do we make sure that we're building strategies that are inclusive and that are considering all different sort of life stages and abilities, and how do we bring that together? So that's one part of that community resiliency piece. The other part that's related to that is sort of also related to what was talked about in terms of like yoga in the park. Peterborough is blessed to have an abundance of natural green space and trails, and we have a natural amphitheater that wasn't used this past year for Music Fest, or our Folk Fest, which is the best free folk festival in Canada, the Peterborough Folk Festival. So how do we have these creative ways to bring people together, particularly outside, where we know that it's safer, it's, you know, it's healthier, you can distance, you've got fresh air. And so those are things that this working group has also been looking at. How can we merge, how can we get, say, the art gallery to maybe take some stuff outside and put it in a park? And can we do a kind of scavenger hunt, some kind of creative ways to have those types of events is something that we're very much looking at. So there's a lot going on, and I get quite excited about it, as you can tell. And I forgot to start my timer, so just yell at me when I'm running up against my time. Another thing that was mentioned before is, and I think that we're going to see across the board, is the reuse, redeployment of space, not just outdoor space, but also real estate. So the city, for example, in Peterborough, we don't have a 24-hour shelter. We don't have like a 24-hour drop-in shelter, but we need one because we have, you know, a housing issue and a homelessness issue. And so we were on a staff call a couple of months ago, and we had recently taken over this building on Wolf Street. It's like was a house, anyways, doesn't matter. And I said, well, to the commissioner, I said, so your staff, nobody's working there? Like, so that building's vacant. And so yes. And I said, well, why don't we then, can't we turn that into this overflow shelter so that people have a place to go? So we've been working on just renovating that, making it accessible, because there's a lot of employees, even post-COVID, who I think the nature of work is going to look different in terms of coming into the office or partly work, you know, job sharing, that kind of thing. So this community services building is going to be our new overflow shelter, because previously we couldn't find a landlord that would host an overflow shelter, because it's, you know, it's a hard, you know, it's a hard sell. So I said, rather than fight with a landlord, why don't we just be the landlord if we have this vacant building? So I think really interesting opportunities like that are going to arise. One of the, you know, in Peterborough, and I think other municipalities too, real estate isn't something that we have in droves. But what we do have, particularly with a lot of staff working remotely, potentially for the foreseeable future, how do we take advantage of that in a unique and interesting way? So those are a few of the things that are going on here. Again, I work with the Eastern Ontario Mayor's Caucus, was just elected chair of that actually, and the Eastern Ontario Leadership Council, which has hired a firm out of Kingston called Limestone Analytics that has been doing a lot of work for us on modeling economic recovery. And it was too big of a PowerPoint to share here, but I can certainly send that to any members that are interested, because as much as it's Eastern Ontario, there's lessons that are common throughout the whole province. And again, you know, even if it's not identical, I think we can all learn from each other. And that's what we're going to have to keep doing, right? Like, there wasn't a handbook for this. When I ran for mayor, I wasn't like, I hope there's a pandemic and it throws off my whole work plan. But you adapt and you figure it out, and you talk to other mayors about how they're getting through it and what is working in their communities and what's not. So that's a few of the things that are working well here. And I'm just going to leave it at that because I feel like I've been talking for a long time.
Thank you, Mayor Therrien. We're going to hear now from Mayor David Bailey from the County of Brant. Elected as Mayor of the County of Brant in 2018, he is serving his first four-year term. He's been actively engaged in civic leadership for over 25 years. Mayor Bailey prides himself as being an outspoken advocate for the preservation of our built heritage and his desire to repurpose historic buildings whenever possible. He believes arts, culture, and heritage play a key role in quality of life for citizens and visitors. And he's also recently been named EDCO's Community Influencer of the Year. Welcome, Mayor Bailey.
Well, thank you. Thank you for asking me to be here today. listening to the other two mayors, you know, there's big pieces of both your presentations that apply to the county of Brant also. We've all done sort of the right things as quickly as we can. Um, I don't know whether you know it or not, but the county of Brant is a very big county. It's 3 times the size of the city of Brantford, and it's completely surrounds Brantford. It goes from Woodstock to Cambridge to Hamilton twice. And if you were to line up all of our roads, you would get to Nova Scotia. It's a very big rural community with 3 major pieces to it, one being Paris, one being St. George, and one being Burford. Paris is sort of the growing community right now in the county of Brant, obviously on the river. And then we have St. George, which is a Victorian sort of village. It remains Victorian. And then we have Burford, which is a little bit more of turn of century industrial. And then we have all the side roads and all the hamlets and all the little villages in between. So we have, I think, 31 different named communities in the county of Brant. And as I said, a lot of farmers everywhere else. So it's a challenge. It's a safety, though. It's a feeling of safety in a pandemic that you have so much open space. We never felt crowded. We never felt like we were on top of each other. We have lots of green space, lots of trails, lots of parks, and obviously lots of farms. We were sad, obviously, to see all of our festivals disappear too, all of the things that make the county of Brant actually the #7 best place to live in Canada and the best municipal place to live in Canada. So we're very proud of that too. We have a lot of growth in the county of Brant right now. We have about 5,600 houses at some point of development. We were obviously deemed a place to grow by the province. We obviously are just off the green belt there. And we do have the river that runs through Paris. And again, like Barrie, it sounds like we have the same kind of deal going on. People want to get out of the cities and they don't want to work at home anymore. They want to work at the cottage, and they want to have the cottage be a house of some sort in the county of Brant. So we came into this pandemic with a few dollars. So I was never worried financially about what was going to happen to the county of Brant, because with development comes development fees. And so we have quite a lot of money right now. Not that we know what to do with it, but right now it's fairly liquid. So I thought, oh, here comes a pandemic, and it's my first term, and I'm not a politician. I never sat on council. I come from a very social place, and you'll never find a bigger supporter of the rainbow, but I didn't come to council to lead with any colors. I didn't come with any colors of red, blue, green, or orange. I came completely neutral. And I was, wondering what the government was going to do for me, because as I said, I'm new to it all, and I've learned to listen a lot and then make some fairly good decisions, I think. So anyway, what we did is we thought we couldn't, or I thought I can't control the entire worldwide pandemic, but I can put all my energy into making it the best for the people that work for the county of Brant, and that's what I did. I put a lot of time and effort with staff in getting to know our employees better. I made it sort of my goal to not let anyone go, to not have to lay anyone off. And as jobs became complete, or contracts became complete, we would move everybody to bylaw, because all of a sudden we had all these rules and all these bylaws. And in a county like Brant, we only had maybe 4 bylaw officers. And I'm not sure that they were the busiest 4 people that we employed, but all of a sudden now they were. And as I said, we come from a very big county. So we would get a complaint at one end of the county, and then the other end of the county, and 4 people were getting very tired very quickly. So as people's contracts and things were completed, everybody became a bylaw officer. And now I think we have an army of bylaw officers now, because there's a lot of rules to enforce, and a lot of things that need to be addressed when complaints come up. We also made working at home an option. We made some very creative decisions for babysitting, and we have a very young staff at the county of Brant, and no one saw this coming. And there's lots of children. Our employees have lots of kids, and there was no plan. There was nothing in place. So we just said, you know what, let's make it work, and get your parents involved and grandparents and whatever works. And it did work, and everyone became much closer. Our staff is amazing. they all just did what they needed to do to make it all work. And as the two of you know, the mayors, when you declare an emergency, the council sort of falls back, and all of a sudden the mayor is left to deal with senior staff, and which is a really good thing and a really bad thing. I used to always think that, wouldn't it be nice to make all these decisions on my own and not have to ask 10 other counselors what they think and go through the back and forth and all the things you do when you have a very active council with 10 very different characters on my council, I'll tell you. And I thought it would be good to make all the decisions. And all of a sudden, as you're making all the decisions, you start to miss the input and all the things that make you want to be the mayor. All this input of bouncing around the council chamber and around the horseshoe. But the decisions got made. But I decided that because we were so busy, I wasn't going to have any of our committees closed down. So I started to chair all the planning committees, which again, as a brand new mayor and someone who's never been in politics, it was quite a challenge for the mayor to chair a planning board of a lot of developers that are all wanting things done yesterday. And so we just wanted to keep the permits going. We wanted to keep everything moving, and we did that very well. And now the Zoom is hooked up and all our counselors are getting together again. We're doing everything by Zoom, but work is getting done. We never really missed a beat. We have a health hub on the go. We built 3 fire halls. We have a community center on the go, and we're redoing our council chamber and a lot of other things downtown. So the County of Brant really didn't miss a trick, and that is because we had the finances not to worry about too much right away. And then came the bonus of all bonuses. The present government of Ontario started doing the right thing, and they started giving us money. And some of the money was just money, use it, you must need it by now. It's a pandemic and everyone else seems to need it, so you must need it. And so we did, and things that weren't sort of specified for certain projects, we just use and we have it as a reserve. Other things that were designated transportation and or infrastructure or whatever the tag was put on the check, we certainly took all checks and smiled a lot and thanked them very much every time. And we did all right. We're doing all right, and I'm very pleased. I'm very pleased with what's going on right now in the province of Ontario. And I am not the mayor that should be saying that usually, but I am the mayor that's saying that because I believe that. No one threw us a token amount of money and said, here's what we can give you, see what you can do with that. They gave us enough money that we didn't have to worry about canceling anything. All we did was defer things. So all of our arenas, when they needed to be closed, were closed, but we know they're going to reopen. Our programs weren't canceled. No one was disappointed. Our glass was never half empty in the County of Brant. I'm a pretty optimistic kind of guy, and everything is still going to happen. I just can't give you a date. So Apple Fest will happen. Art in the Park will happen. Paris Drinks Festival will happen. It's just going to not happen right now. So I am very happy that the government thought that all of our programming and all of the things that make the County of Brant as wonderful as it is, and it is a really wonderful place. I mean, and I invite both the mayors to come and visit me here in the county when you can. We have all kinds of restaurants overlooking the river. We have all kinds of weekend kayaking and canoeing and rafting. In fact, I told Russell Press, who takes care of getting people to the county, to take some holidays, because he needs to stop telling people to come here because we're full of people. And as I said, we weren't prepared for all the people, and our infrastructure wasn't prepared for all the people. So I'm very lucky. And every now and then you get the right mayor put into the right position at the right time with the right staff. And this is it for the County of Brant. So I'm very happy to say that although we all want to hug somebody really badly, I mean, I want to hug everybody I see right now. It's and I just can't wait to do it because I am that kind of guy. I am that huggy mayor, and I don't apologize for being that, but I know how much I miss it. So I can only imagine how kids feel about grandparents and all of that kind of stuff. And that's what I am so saddened by, not the fact that we're not going to make it through the pandemic, because we are. and I feel very good about the time frame that we are. But I feel badly for all the people that have been ill or have lost people or have not been able to celebrate or get married or all the things that are only, once in a lifetime, or well, these days, maybe twice in a lifetime events, that they haven't been able to do that. So I'm thinking that the next festival we should have in the county of Brant could be some sort of a hugathon. And I'm right up front on that. So I'd like to thank you for inviting me to be on the panel today, bring you greetings from my council and from the county of Brant, and thank you for the award for the Community Influencer of the Year 2020. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And it only happened because I have a staff that are wonderful, and they elevate me when they can. And I have a council who decided not to make me look like a monkey when I got elected, because they could have. They have much more experience than I do, and they chose to again support me and elevate me, and I'm very grateful. So thank you very much.
I'm down for the hugathon.
Thank you, Mayor Bailey, and thank all of you for the insights that you've shared, and obviously very different communities that you're leading, and different challenges. But it's been inspiring to see the diversity of approaches you've taken to it too, and the ability you've shown to find some opportunities to do some good during this time, and to continue leading your communities during what is unquestionably, we keep hearing it's an unprecedented time. Certainly has been. All three of your communities sound wonderful, and they're on my list of places to visit once the pandemic's over.
Well, you're welcome. You're welcome.
Look forward to continuing the conversation as we deal with some questions from attendees. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we're going to open it up for questions from the audience. Reminder, if you'd like to ask a question from of our mayors, to please type it in the Q&A box there. And remember, you can upvote those questions as well. I'd like to maybe start off though by asking each of our mayors if you could maybe just tell us, what is it, if they're just briefly, because it's a big question, but is there anything that stands out for you as a leader that you understand better now than you did 12 months ago? Mayor Lehman, do you want to?
What a great question. Well, it probably understand how to make Excel charts and amateur epidemiology a lot better. But no, in all seriousness, I think something I talked about in the video was the pace of change. I think in all levels of government, where we tend to be risk averse and want a lot of information, because of the need for faster decision making during a pandemic. I think we've all given ourselves license to be more experimental and to take greater risks, even if something might not work. And not everything we did worked. Some things, there wasn't a lot of take up in terms of economic development incentives, or we had to change the model. But the speed with which we put a new idea in the field and tried it out is certainly, an order of magnitude faster than we were operating before. And I really want to carry that culture post-pandemic into our organization and frankly into our sector. I'm honored right now to chair the Ontario Big City Mayors Caucus. And I can tell you all of those mayors, from John Tory to Gord Krantz and Milton, all feel the same way, that one of the things that's been refreshing amid this incredibly difficult time is there's a greater willingness to experiment, a greater willingness to tolerate the potential for failure, especially when you're trying to solve a problem in a hurry.
Mayor Therrien, do you have some thoughts on
Yeah,
leadership shifts?
with that for sure. As I said in the presentation too, this pandemic has shown that government can be nimble and can adapt more quickly than we're sort of historically used to. And so applying that to, other issues in the community, and also being just a bit more creative, but understanding that also puts, immense pressure on staff. So how do we balance that? Because I'm sure it's the same for all these municipalities, but we have limited staff capacity, and then they've been thrown. First of all, council throws them stuff all the time, and then also the work of the pandemic. But I think also it's been a really good way to hear from different sectors about what the challenges are that they're sort of anticipating, because sometimes in government, you try to hear from it, but you're still, kind of operating in your lane, in your little bubble. So this has been a really good way at the different tables, round tables about economic recovery and other things, to have that cross-pollination of ideas and how to move forward, because we can all learn from each other and help them understand why, municipalities do things a certain way and what their frustrations are, and kind of back and forth like that.
Thank you. Mayor Bailey.
Well, I think the thing that I know now that I didn't know then or wasn't aware of then is how important it is to have friends and to be social. I've wandered around a very big house here that has everything, and I've never felt lonelier. I've never felt like everything was unnecessary like I do when I wander around here, not being able to have dinner parties and euchre parties and poker parties and all the things that make my life as complete and as wonderful as it is. And then I go to the municipal buildings, and I stand in our arenas that are empty. And these are beautiful arenas that cost a lot of money, took a lot of time to get them, and they're empty, and it's just a building. And you go and you stand on the bridge and you look up the river. Usually it's full of people on balconies having dinner, and it's just a river with some back ends of some buildings showing, and it's very sad. And that's what I've learned. It doesn't matter who you are, what you have, or where you come from. When you have no social interaction, it's horrifying, and it's very, very isolating. And as I said before, or I might have said it at council last night, sorry, the mental health piece of this is what worries me. People are getting quiet. Seniors are getting quiet because they're not quite sure what's going on. And I don't like seeing old people get quiet because it's too much time. And I think that's what I'm aware of now is the socialization of all of us. As I said, no matter who you are, where you live, you need to have that, because nothing else matters if you don't have it. And that's what I'm very aware of. And that's what I can't wait to get back to. And if that becomes my hug-a-thon, then that's my hug-a-thon. And I also want to draw your attention. This is my trophy that you gave me for Influencer of the Year. And I'm very, very proud of it. And I thank you for that. Thank you.
Thanks to all of you for those responses. Now we have a question about the exodus of people from the GTA, and many communities, of course, are benefiting from some development and growth as a result of that. And our audience is wondering what your thoughts are about what might happen 5 to 10 years from now when the GTA rebounds, and what might be the impact in terms of vacancy and subsequent tax revenue losses. Mayor Therrien, do you want to kick us off on that one?
Yeah, Peterborough's been seeing that for a while. Our community's sort of in an interesting place because we're at our built boundary, and we've had historic tensions around potential land annexations, to put it diplomatically. So that's something that continues to be ongoing. In the meantime, we are part of the Places to Grow Act, so we've been trying to incentivize intensification downtown, and there are several developments that are happening to that effect. We do have a lot of, because we have also seen the rapid rise in housing prices, we do have issues with long-term landlords, selling and people being displaced, and landlords that would prefer to rent to students over people that might be on social assistance. So all of those things sort of compounded. But you can still get, a house here. I have, my house here is 3 times the size of my sister's in Parkdale, and it was significantly cheaper. So folks that are working from home, are taking advantage of that, 10 to 12, 15 years when things rebound. I mean, it'll be interesting. We talked a little bit in the panel about the changing nature of work and the workplace. And I do think, a lot of those big towers in Toronto, those guys are realizing that they can save money too on having their employees work from home. So it's so hard to predict. I mean, this whole past year has been hard to predict. So I think really, like in Peterborough, we're just focused on building smart, trying to build sustainably, prioritizing healthy, walkable, safe communities. So for whoever lives here in 10 or 15 years, we just want to build the best community that we can and make sure that we're planning for, again, sustainable, healthy, environmentally friendly communities.
Mayor Bailey, your
Well, I
thoughts
think-
on the future, what the future will hold?
Well, I think Toronto's going to have a hard time getting people to want to come back. You can get to downtown Toronto from the county of Brant in less time than you can cross the city of Toronto. We have to grow, so people are coming here. The homes here that they can get $1 million house here, which is a lot of money in the county of Brant. That is sort of what people are paying without blinking an eye. And they have all this lifestyle that comes with it. So not only are they owning beautiful homes on beautiful lots, there's lots of things to do, and there's not a lot of people. So they're going to have a hard time, I think, getting people back to the city because it's not an inconvenience really to live outside of the city. And I think that's the same for Barrie. It's just far enough out that it's just a drive to work, or you can work from home now. And I think a lot of companies that are successful are going to make it very easy for people to work at home because it's such a smart thing for businesses to do. So I think when Toronto does reopen, I think you're going to find there's going to be a lot of condos for rent.
Thank you. Mayor Lehman?
Yeah, I'd certainly agree with that. I think, the Toronto condo market, there were a lot of people that predicted this was a sort of re-urbanization lifestyle. And I think there was a small component of that. But to be frank, I think it was inflated by short-term rentals and foreign investment. And that produced this bubble of condo construction, particularly in PD1 in downtown Toronto, which is now correcting. And, if you look, the best stuff I've read on the Exodus is by Mike Moffat. I mentioned him in my talk. He is an economist at the Ivy School in London at Western, and he's written about which groups are leaving Toronto, what age groups, where they're from and where they're going. And there's this chain effect of people moving from the city of Toronto to places like Barrie, and then people moving out of Barrie to smaller towns and or rural Ontario. So there's this whole continuum. But it's very, very clear and it's substantial. And it actually predated COVID, which is interesting. It's just accelerated since COVID. The panelist asked, what happens when people start to move back to Toronto? I think there'll be a bit of that, but I'm with Mayor Bailey. I think it's going to be tough because the choice, if you've got a choice about how you work, why would you make that choice? And I think the reality for many companies is they are going to try and take some costs out in terms of bricks and mortar in office space, but they're still going to want to get their team together. I'm somebody who believes work from home is not going to be an all or nothing thing. I think people are going to, the companies are going to still want to bring their teams together, even on a weekly basis for a day or something like that. And you're going to have new models of work environments, shared offices, companies that are taking space, and we've got it Monday, you've got it Tuesday. There's a lot of amenity there. There's less permanent office space. Those sorts of things, I think, are going to change the nature of the way we work. And so I see the long-term change as being permanent. And I think it's only going to be accelerated by automation and technology. I really worry about the equity impacts of that because it is higher income folks that are able to do that, and the pressure it's driving on my real estate market. I mean, it's hard for me to overstate this right now. And the last thing I'll say on this is nothing's even making it to the market anymore. If somebody wants to sell their house, they're selling it with 8 preemptive offers. It's quite unbelievable what's going on. And yeah, that's temporary. I don't think that level of pressure will be sustained, but it is being driven by some fundamentals. And again, so everybody out there, go read Mike Moffat on this. He's very, very active on Twitter, but his materials is online. And just the 2,000 words he's written on which demographics are leaving Toronto and where they're going and when will be worth your 5-minute read.
Thank you. That's some good thoughts there, and I'm sure it's a question that's on the minds of communities right across the province. We are, I think, at the wrap up time here. There were some more great questions there, so perhaps folks, if you have specific questions, I know some of them are specific for different communities, you can reach out directly to those communities to get answers. And we're down to the wire now, so we do have to wrap up this session. I want to thank Mayor Lehman, Mayor Therrien, and Mayor Bailey. Thank you again for your time here and the insights you've shared, and thanks to EDCO for hosting this great session. Now back over to you, Kate.
Thanks so much, Susan, and thank you for being the moderator for that session. Thank you to all of the mayors for your insight in leadership in times of disaster. I'd also like to congratulate Mayor Bailey on being named EDCO's 2020 Community Influencer of the Year. And I think you may just have another EDCO award-winning project with that hug-a-thon you talk about.
Hey, that's great. Bring it on.
We'll be there.
Thank you.
Thank you. EDCO is pleased to announce that in lieu of speaker gifts, a contribution to the EDCO Scholarship Fund will be made in your honor.
Perfect.
The votes are in and the judges have spoken. Please take a look at the following announcement for the winner of this year's Bright Ideas competition. Congratulations to Team Performance Management, Amanda St. John, Aaliyah Abbas, and Brandon Webb, and to all of our Bright Ideas competitors. Great work. We'll now take a short break to get that drink, stretch or take a bio break, or continue conversations in the chat. We'll see you all back here at 10:15 for our next session, Personal Leadership Strategies, presented by Sophie Perot of Farm Credit Canada. Following Sophie's presentation, the Honorable Elizabeth Dadswell, Lieutenant Governor of Ontario, will present the 2020 Lieutenant Governor's Award. Janice Stein will also be with us again to close out our conference series. You won't want to miss a minute. We'll see you at 10:15.
Who is FCC? Well, our About Us is really about you, the goals you want to reach, and the dreams you have. You're invested in your business, and as the only lender 100% invested in Canadian agriculture and food, so are we. Because a dream is just the start. It also needs a lender who understands where your dreams come from, where they can go, and what it takes to get there. If you want to start, grow, or transform your agriculture or food business, we can help. Because we're not just your lender. We're your champion, your catalyst, and we're behind you every step of the way. We are FCC. Dream. Grow. Thrive.